How's everyone temperature-wise? You guys would be all used to it, wouldn't you? Mary's cold. I'm not cold, no, but Mary is. This is summer. When we left home, the temperature here, we're in winter at home. The temperature at home
It's warmer than this.
was actually 3 degrees warmer than here when we...
Actually, it was a lot warmer.
A lot warmer,
We
actually.
were wearing shorts and
We
t-shirts.
were in shorts and t-shirts. You had a warm April, did you? What's warm? 25.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah.
Is that did everyone call it a heat wave? Or? Yeah, well, that's your spring, isn't it? April, yeah. Well, it's really the middle of your spring, isn't it? Is that right? March, April, May, yeah. Yep. Yeah, next time we come, we'll probably be coming in...
Your autumn.
Your autumn, yeah. Yeah, probably. We're planning our next trips at the moment. So, but probably the next time we're in your hemisphere here, we'll be in Europe rather than here. So
In southern Europe.
Southern Europe,
Yeah.
yeah, and Germany maybe. Germany.
Yeah, we hope to be in Germany, France and Portugal in August, September next year. Next year.
Yeah. And then the year after that, in your autumn, which is...
August, September.
Was it their spring? No, it's their autumn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, then in 2027 we'd like to come back to the UK.
Yeah.
And hopefully Ireland.
Ireland and Sweden.
And Sweden. Yeah.
That's what we're trying to plan anyway.
Yeah.
Subject to change with or without notice. As a friend of mine used to say.
Well, you'd have some notice, but...
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. How's everyone? Settled? There's a few missing chairs, huh? Okay.
Might be sunning themselves.
All right. You got your card things? Yep. Now, this prayer is in the Paget Messages, right? So you'll find it in the first volume of the Paget Messages.
It's after that.
On page, if you look at the top front here, it just says...
Oh, yeah, it does, doesn't it? Hang on. It's quite near to the beginning, isn't
Yeah.
it? There.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Page 40...
Oh, no. There, 45.
45? Of the gifts, the books that you've been gifted.
But it's a bit thee and thy, that one.
It's a bit thee and thy for those that get triggered by that. We've created the non-thee and thy version. Yeah. Sorry, Em.
What's that?
I heard something, but
Yeah, it's not for public.
not for public consumption. Okay. So what we would like to do now, I feel, is to discuss with you the prayer itself and sort of look at it more like a self-analysis process rather than sort of that as a prayer. Does that make sense? Because as most of you already know, you have not been exercising a desire to pray for God's love, right? So what we would like to do is show you how the prayer can identify, and you can also use the prayer to identify the reasons why you're not doing it, or not exercising a desire, or not receiving God's love, because all of the reasons are here in the prayer, contained within the one prayer.
Could we say, Jay, that every sincere prayer is very personal? It's a personal exchange between you and God. And so using words, even if they're words written by Jesus, that are you're never going to probably use these exact words to have your prayer with God. But this is something that as Jesus is about to explain, highlights a lot of truth about God and our relationship to God, and also can help us identify where we're out of harmony with that truth. So don't confuse this next couple of days as us saying, now you're going to go home and use this prayer, because this isn't your prayer. Your prayer comes from you, and it's between you and God. So, yeah.
Yep. So let's first look at what prayer really is, shall we? And I feel this is something to really get in your heart, what it is. For the majority of you, if you'd been educated to pray in the past at all, it would have been like an intellectual exercise, right? Our Father who art in heaven, you remember that for those of you Christians? Yep. Hallowed be thy name. Yep. Can you see how it's so embedded that even
we're still saying it in our head even after we stopped, aren't we? Yep.
Even years and years later, it's still something that gets said and you recognise it immediately. Well, that obviously is not prayer, right? In fact, if anything, it's just a bunch of words, which, by the way, coming from that portion of the Bible, contain many false beliefs as well. And unfortunately, that's the way it is for a lot of prayer for different religious faiths. I'm just going to have a cough. I made the mistake of eating some mango.
It was delicious mango. Thank you.
With sugar in it, and I respond to the sugar. Okay, so what is it? What do you think it is? Now, you've heard me teach what it is before, yeah? So don't just tell me back what I've already taught you. What do you feel it is? Inside yourself, what do you feel it is? Em, you want to start? We got mics here?
Yep,
Yep,
she's
sorry.
coming. She's just...
Thanks. Thanks, Annette.
It's like a feeling reaching out from my heart towards God.
Okay, so you've said a feeling, reaching out, sort of from your heart. Now, what do you decide? What is your heart?
Well, it's a physical heart.
Because it's not the physical boom, 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 is it?
No, there's like an energetic centre there that it comes from.
Yep.
Is it the chakra? I don't know.
Well, this
is it the connection to the soul?
Yeah, when we say, I really felt that in my heart, it's not like your heart. It's interesting, though. Sometimes your heart does skip a bit, doesn't it? Interesting. But might need to go and see a doctor if that... No. Sometimes it has the effect of making you feel like that's happened. But obviously your heart involves your...
soul.
Your desires. Let's start with there, shall we? So you see, the problem for most of us is we can't identify what a soul feeling is. Many of us have bodily feelings, don't we? Like pains and aches, but also nice feelings when you get touched or whatever, nice feelings in our body. And we often have nice emotions, like when we see something pleasurable, have a nice emotion. But for the most part, we think and feel, for the most part, that all of those things are happening in our body. And because we get bodily sensations, often attached to those sensations of feeling, we often believe that these feelings emanate from our body. They're generated by our body, is the way we think, right? So we need to be specific about, okay, if communication with God, and we've talked about this before, if communication with God is a soul to God's soul communication, which it is, then what is our soul? How do we identify that our feeling is coming from that, not our mind generating it, but rather a true emotional feeling? So desire is one, isn't it? But emotion is the other, isn't it? It contains emotion.
It's also when we say we feel something in our heart, how do we typify that kind of feeling? It's not like, oh, I thought about doing the shopping. You know, not just physically now. How big is that feeling when we say we feel it in our heart?
It feels expansive.
It
feels like...
It's not like something you can just push to one side, is it? If it's a heart-based feeling, it feels like it's all of your feelings in that moment, isn't it? Yeah.
It sort of encompasses, doesn't it, your entire self, in the sense that you can't really think about anything else.
When you really feel like something's in my heart, or it's coming from my heart, or it hurt my heart, it's not a small sort of sideline kind of a feeling, is it?
I think most of us can identify some feelings more associated with our pain than we can with our pleasure, to be honest. Because what we often notice is that when it comes to your pain, have you noticed if your pain is, when I say not your physical pain, but your emotional pain, when it's quite strong, let's say a loved one passed, or let's say your relationship with someone you were in love with broke down. Can you feel how, like, you can't think or feel about anything else, can you? It's just like that constantly. And so that sort of can be related to, that's so big, that emotion and desire and passion and longing and missing and all of these other things involved, that's so big that I can't even use my head anymore to resolve what's going on, right? And this is often when we try to get our big emotions under control, of course, too, because we feel the pain of the emotion so great that we try so hard to suppress these kind of feelings. So to have a heart-based longing, obviously, that needs to be something that begins within our feeling process, our emotions, not within our mind. But can you see, if I'm just beginning a relationship with somebody, you don't have those kind of feelings, do you? So what starts the feelings? What starts those kind of feelings? So let's say I meet Mary. If I'm attracted, why am I attracted to spending some time with her? What's going on inside of me? There's a beginning of something, isn't there? And how do you define that beginning of things? It's not in your mind, right? Can you see? The average person on earth is so mind-bound that we don't realise that most of the things that happen to us are not in our mind. But we're sort of just responding to the things that are going on that we've not identified and felt much about. And all we've done is just responded to them before we've even had a thought frequently. And then we realise, I just had a response. Afterwards, generally, that's what happens. So it's that part of you, this soul part of you, is that part of you is having these emotions, having these feelings without your mind necessarily being on the same wavelength or path even, isn't it? Can you see that? Have any of you experienced that? Where you realise you did something and it was only afterwards you went, what? Why? Why did I do that? Yeah?
Many times. Many times,
yeah. They are soul feelings that motivated you to do those things. And most of us are so detuned from those kind of feelings that frequently we're almost unaware, almost completely unaware they're going on all the time, almost completely unaware. But obviously for us to have a connection with God, we need to become aware of those kind of feelings because they are soul-based feelings. In fact, you, after a while, become so aware of those feelings that the mind barely has any connection with you at all, hardly. The mind just becomes a tool that you use for different reasons, but mostly for the purpose of communicating. But the real purpose of your physical body's brain is actually to run your body, because your body has a lot of functions and facilities that your brain needs processing power to control. Right? So if you can think about it this way. The way we've been designed is this. Here's my half of the soul, which is connected to my two bodies. Right? My spirit body and my physical body. And my half of the soul. Right? Now, the brain of the physical body controls, and its primary purpose is to control the functioning of the physical body. So all of the automatic processes that you do automatically are controlled by the brain. So an example of that is you breathe. Why? Because you could stop at any moment, right? But you notice when you try to hold your breath that long, what happens? Yeah. For the average person, maximum you can hold it is like 2 minutes usually if you've got some air capacity. And what starts to happen after that? Well, you all know, you all want to breathe again, right? Don't you? The brain is doing that as an automatic function, affecting you, stopping you from taking it to the point where you just don't breathe again, right? It's for your life, to keep you alive. The brain of the body is controlling you doing that, right? And the spirit body has a brain of its own that also controls its functions. So it has its similar functions. You have a sense of touch, taste, and you have other senses too. And there's also a wider variety of senses. So like in our sight, we can see the visible spectrum with these eyes, but when we go in the spirit body, you've got a much larger spectrum of colour and light that you can see. And so you will arrive in the spirit world one day and you will say, what's that colour? I've never seen that before. What do you call that? Because you'll see all these colours that you've never seen before and so forth. And the reason why is because your spirit body can see a larger spectrum, but functionally, sight is still a part of your functioning. And it's automatic. It's something you don't have to tell it to do. It's not like you're like a robot where you've got to need a bit of program and code that says, look at that, or what is that colour? Work that out from a table, or whatever, right? These things don't happen because there's these automatic, built-in, instinctual, you would call them, functions with regard to the bodies. And there's also instinctual functions in the soul, actually. The soul has instinctual functions. And we won't get into them now, but it's important to understand that the facilities the faculties that are a part of the bodies are also a part of the soul. So the soul has the ability to see. The soul has the ability to hear. The soul has the ability to feel sensation, touch. No ability that you have in your body is not available to you. So that's two negatives. So every ability that's in your body, physical, is also in your soul along with a lot more. Right? So, but your body doesn't have, it responds to soul functionings, but it doesn't necessarily have those functionings in it. So what I mean by that is, an example of that is your emotions. You have the sensation sometimes when you're processing an emotion that it comes from a part of your body, but actually it comes from your soul, and your body is just responding to either the storage or the release in that area of your body to that emotion. So the key now is for us to go, okay, our brain, our physical body brain, which is not your mind, by the way, is just basically a computer handling the control and functionality of your body, along with handling physiologically the connection between your physical body and the spirit one. Right? The silver cord, which is the connection that begins at the base of your brain right down to the tail of your spine, is a connection, you could call it electrical apparatus, connecting the two bodies together. And when you die, that snaps. So you no longer are able to feel what your body feels after death. So you'll be in the spirit world and your body might be being cut up on the, you know how they cut all the organs out usually if they want to present you, in a funeral. Well, you're not going to feel any of that, thank God for that. Because if you could, it would be terrible, wouldn't it? You'd have all that sensation of pain. So the cord snaps, and all of the nervous system snaps, and all of the sensations of the body and all the functioning of the body snaps. And so now you're in the spirit body, and the physical body you can't feel anymore. You can look at it, you can examine it, you can even touch it with your spirit body, but you can't feel its sensations anymore. And God's designed all of these things for a good reason, and I think it's quite self-evident oftentimes what those reasons are. Obviously, if you died and your spirit body was in the spirit world and you could still feel your physical body as a part of an appendage even though it's decaying, that would be a pretty painful process, right? So obviously you don't want to do that, so God created it this way. Cord snaps, everything's separate. But your emotions are not separated, right? Your passions, your desires, your longings, your thoughts and all of your feelings are not separated. You still have them. They're no longer able to be expressed in the body. So that should tell you that your feelings, your desires, your emotions, your thoughts, even your senses don't exist really in your body. There's apparatus in your body that allow you to feel the sense of touch, but it's not your brain that is the final processor of them. They get referred via the silver cord, via another cord to connect to your half of the soul, and you're feeling them in your soul. And that's why you remember them. So if that didn't happen when you passed, you'd forget all the feelings you had when you're on earth. And nobody does that ever, right? When they pass, they always have their feelings that they used to have on earth, along with a heightened sensation of them generally, because now the spirit body is a more sensitive instrument for the soul than the physical body is. And so you feel everything more sensitively as a result, right? So it's important to understand that your feelings don't come from your mind, and they don't come from your body either, your physical body. And they don't come from your spirit body's mind either, or the spirit body's body either. They come from your soul. Your desires, your beliefs are all stored in your soul. So you could say fundamentally that this soul is a container or an entity of the real you. Couldn't you? It contains the real me. It has energy. When I say energy, what I mean by that is that, and in the Paget messages, when you read some of them, you'll see it calls it the spirit of the body. It's not talking about the spirit body. It's talking about the energy that causes the soul to decide and will to do things. And that energy comes from your soul. And it's an energy, we call it in the spirit world, we call it a spirit of the soul, which is the energy, the governing force of the soul, motivating it to do different things. And that energy is a combination of emotions, beliefs, passions, longings, desires, and also includes injuries. It includes sadness, these kind of injuries. It includes fear and all sorts of things, because you still have those things when you pass. So all of those feelings which are contained within the soul form a part of its energy, its motivation, its desire to get something done. Included in it are the sensations of the soul, the physical senses of the soul, because your senses are also a big part of your being, because without senses you would not be able to measure things. You wouldn't be able to measure, that hurt, or that feels good, or that feels pleasurable, or I need to eat now, or any of those things. Or you need a way of measuring all of your senses, and all of those senses, the measurement of all those senses occurs in the soul as well, right? So that being the case, the soul, being the real me, is the connection that I need to embrace with the process of prayer. So then the question becomes, well, what part of me is that? Doesn't it? So we've said it's your beliefs that are part of that. So what do we mean by beliefs? What do you think we mean by beliefs? What are they? Because they're not just thoughts, are they? Like, they generate thoughts, but they're not just thoughts. Because they make you feel things, don't they? Beliefs. That you feel certain, like, you'll find that you can hear from somebody a truth and even know intellectually that what you feel is an error and still not be able to get rid of it. You can't use your mind to force the soul to get rid of something, because the soul is here and your mind is here. The mind's in your spirit body, the soul is its feelings and emotions and desires and passions, and that is the soul's mind, by the way. The way the soul thinks is like that. So what you call thinking is really what I would say to you is the soul feeling, right? The equivalent of the soul feeling. So when the soul thinks, it feels, right? Interestingly enough, in this mind, you can think without feeling. You do that many times, right? But the soul's not capable of that. It's not capable of thought without feeling. You want to ask Tim?
So we can have thoughts without any feeling being behind it?
Sorry, have thoughts without...
Any feeling driving the thoughts?
Yes, you can. Although a better way of saying it is you can have thoughts that you don't understand the feelings driving them. And so you think the feelings don't exist, but they actually do. You understand? So a better way of stating the truth of it is that many of the thoughts that you have are actually driven by emotions that you're unaware of, but could be aware of, but you're unaware of them, and so you think the thoughts are independent, but they're actually being driven by emotions that are quite plain. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or aspirations. Not just emotions,
not just
also
emotions.
Aspirations.
Yeah, in the Paget messages, this is another thing you'll read, right? We often talk about aspiration. You've seen that for those of you who've read, yes? Aspiration. We often talk about desire. We often talk about passion. We often talk about longing. We even talk about addictions, and we call them the evil loves of the soul. You understand? So even your addictions, they're not just in your body. They're the out of harmony with love way you love. Or you could call them the evil loves of your soul, right? So your addiction are like loves that you feel passionate, longing for, that embrace, right? You can see from all of these words, these are all words that in the Paget messages, we couldn't share with Ned, with James Paget, very easily the whole idea of emotion. He was a very intellectual man. He was a lawyer. And any of you had experience with lawyers? How many of you are a lawyer? No? But generally, they become very intellectually dominant, don't they? Because they're always about, how can we work around this? How can we sort this out? There's always the sort of mind involved. And this was his trouble too. His mind was involved, and the main reason why we could communicate with him was when it came to his wife, which he had just lost she died, he was not in his mind. He was in his feelings, right? And that is what enabled us to have some influence over his soul, and also therefore what he was willing to write as a result. But it all happened because he became so emotionally overwrought, but as part of that he opened up a part of his soul that he'd kept closed for a long time before she passed, and as a result it enabled an openness with his soul where people who were in the soul could communicate with him better. Make sense? So these things are all a part of your soul. So that includes your addictions. They are all a part of the soul as well. So you could say you can have aspiration which is positive, can't you? In harmony with love. And you can have aspirations that are negative, can't you? Which we'd call evil, out of harmony with love. You can have desires that are positive, like in harmony with love, but also desires that are out of harmony with love, evil, wrong, like not going to help you or anybody else. You can have passions and longings the same way, right? You can have them in one direction or the other, but the fact that you have them, they're a part of the soul. Yep? So the question then becomes, if prayer is the soul-based feelings, can you see it's the sum of the soul-based feelings, and in case of prayer, directed towards God. If it was a relationship, it would be the sum of those feelings directed towards, in my case, Mary. Right? And it's interesting with the soul because it's not just directed towards the people you intend it to be directed towards. And when I say intend it with your mind. Because your mind doesn't have control over it. So when a feeling exists in your soul, it is like an antenna going out to everybody. Anybody can feel it. Not just the person that you feel it for, but anybody else can feel it too. So when I have feelings for Mary, you can feel them if you want to, right? You're not going to feel them aimed at you. There's a difference between you knowing that you're the intended party versus you knowing that you're not. And that occurs in the soul as well. So you can feel a person has an intention or a feeling without, and also at the same time know that it wasn't towards you. Many of you are responding to this all the time. This is why sometimes you feel like, oh, I wanted to talk to that person. Other times you feel like, I don't want to talk to that person at all. And nothing was ever said because you can feel things from them that are in disharmony with how you feel. And all of this communication goes on at the soul level, and I would say like 99% of you don't realise that 99% of what you feel, you don't realise. Does that make sense? In other words, you're feeling things, but you're not recognising them in the moment that they're going out to everybody, and what you're getting is a response from everybody about what you're feeling. This is the power of being in a more loving condition as well. The more loving condition you're in, the more positive feelings are going out from you, and the more people feel that. Now, they don't react well necessarily because their feelings might be opposite to it, opposing it. And so some people you can have a positive feeling towards, like, for example, I'm not going to meet your addiction. That's a feeling I have. Most of you feel pretty bad about it. And when I meet you, you go, oh, all strange with me, and oh, I'm trying to get an addiction and what he's not responding, and there's all sorts of things going on for many of you in that moment, not realising that actually you're feeling a feeling from me and you don't like it. Make sense? And then there's other feelings you like if you're a man who's been mummied by his mother all of your life until you're in your 30s, every woman you meet you're going to want to mother you. And that's going to be a feeling coming out of you. And if there's a woman out there, and there's many, most, who are willing to mother these, shall we say, boys that appear to be men, but they're not yet, right? Because they can't handle their own feelings. And so what happens is that one of the women in the audience will feel that and they'll want to mother you. And for some reason they feel drawn to talk to you and drawn into mothering you and drawn into making... And you feel, oh, that's fantastic. You know, I feel loved now. But if a woman comes along and she doesn't want to mother you, what do you feel then? You know, something's wrong with this girl, like this woman. You know, something put me off there. And all of this is happening, for the most part, without you being conscious as to why. Right? A self-aware person is conscious as to why. But most of us are not that self-aware when it comes to our soul, because we've never been taught to become soul-centric. We've been taught to become mind-dominant, not soul-centric. Right? From a very young age, usually connection with your soul is educated out of you. Yep. It starts with your parents and then it just goes on from there. Society, educated away. So for the most part, the majority of us don't have a real connection with our own soul, our own feelings, passions, desires, longings, loves. We don't even really know what they are, because we've been taught to be so distant from them as to be that they're not even apparent to us anymore. You know, we're not even conscious of them anymore. That's a problem when it comes to prayer. Because prayer is involving every one of those soul faculties. Those soul faculties that are needed in order for God's soul to fill your soul, right? In terms of fill your longings. For the longings to be real, they need to be present in your soul. Right? The passion, desire, the aspiration, the loves, the heartfelt emotion for God needs to be present in your soul for a prayer to occur. Make sense? And I've explained just now why. Mm-hmm. And what's coming out of our soul all the time is this constant emanation of its condition. So in the Paget messages, we called that the soul condition, which was a mixture of all of these things put into one word. Does that make sense? All of these conditions put into one word so Paget could understand what we meant. Yep.
And it's an accumulation, isn't it, our soul condition? And
yep.
We can have desires and aspirations in all different directions and
yep.
feelings.
Loving or unloving.
But the soul condition is it's the term for all of that at once.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. If we have
yep.
just here, thanks.
So if we develop a desire in something else, if we're somebody who's followed our desires in other areas quite passionately, will that help us? I mean, I'm being so disconnected from my own soul. I feel like I've lost the passion for anything. Yeah. Yep. So I just wondered, is it just best to go straight for the desire for God, or?
Well, it's an interesting question because for the most part, we've been taught to have a disconnection from our soul in almost every area, and the older we get, generally, the more numb we become. Yeah. And the problem with that is it's like our soul needs to open a bit, doesn't it, in order for us to even express a longing towards God, like a prayer. So really anything that causes your soul to open in a longing, as long as it's in harmony with love, would actually help you with your longing for God. You follow?
Yeah.
And this is a very important thing to understand for your own sake in terms of don't detune your passions and desires. Like, the more connected you are to them, usually the easier it is to teach a person to have a longing. An example of that in the Paget messages is there was a Paget message from Nero, and Nero on earth was a very passionate man with evil. He was like, he loved evil. When I say passionate, he had an aspiration for evil, desires for evil, passion and a longing for evil. He wanted all of his addictions out. All of his loves were evil, pretty much every one of them. And he just loved being evil.
He went for it.
He went for it. Now, he had a lot of sin to address when he hit the spirit world, obviously, and he did have it was nearly like 1,800 years that it took him to address it, like a long time of sin to address. But, interestingly enough, when he was taught about divine love, he eventually was taught about divine love by his soulmate. When he was taught about it, he understood what it meant to have a passion for something, even though before he had a passion for evil. Does that make sense? Mm. And he could connect to the idea of having a passion for something good instead. That can be contrasted with, there are people in the spirit world who have been in the spirit world for 1,000 years or two who don't have a passion for anything. And in fact, it's becoming a bigger problem where people are passing over without a passion for anything. To teach a person to have a passion for something good is very difficult when they've never had a passion for anything. And they've just done everything like a robot on earth without any connection to it. So it's the good thing about understanding what a soul faculty is you can start measuring yourself and going, do I develop those faculties or do I suppress them? You see? And most people on earth have been taught from a young age to suppress them. So we're going to have to do something, and we'll talk about what we can do in a minute. The prayer actually identifies some of the things you can do, but we have to do something to change it so that we do have a desire for something.
Well, that's probably why I feel for my guides are always trying to get me to be creative. Because it's opening my soul.
That's right. Yeah. There's a lovely message in the Paget messages that talks about the functionality of God's Holy Spirit, which we'll talk about a bit in this process of prayer. I'm not sure whether we'll get to it today or tomorrow. But the important thing to understand about the Holy Spirit is it's not there to open your soul. Its purpose isn't to open your soul. Its purpose is to act as a conduit between God's soul and yours when there's a connection made. So in order to open your soul, other things need to happen. And in the top of the prayer, look at the very first few lines, or the second lot of lines, maybe the third. Just let me have a look. Oh, here it is. Sorry, it's the fourth paragraph. I pray that you will open my soul to the inflowing of your love. Now, how does God do it? How does God open your soul to the inflowing of love? Well, he does it by providing a lot of mechanisms in your soul itself and also externally by people influencing you so that you're triggered into feeling feelings. That you're forced into it eventually. Right? Now, on earth, you may be all of your life on earth, and you're being forced into it every day, by the way, to feel feelings. And many of us use our effort and our intellect and our even what we eat to suppress our feelings, right? We're trying to shut our feelings down in so many different ways. And yet when we pass in the spirit world, a lot of those methods won't be available to you. Like we use drugs, we use alcohol, we use lots of things to avoid feelings, right? But God's trying to every day open you to feelings. So this is, I find it a great irony when people take drugs because you're basically trying to suppress feelings so that God's trying to open you too. So it's not going to be very successful, right? And I'm even talking about drugs, not just things like marijuana or other things like that, but also things like coffee and like caffeine and chocolate and whatever else, They're all things that we use to suppress our feelings, to close down the faculties of the soul to our own detriment, right? And this is a problem because we need to open the faculties of our soul. We need to do the opposite thing, but you can't receive love until your soul is partially opened. You won't even recognize love until it's partially opened. So in order to open it, we need to start looking at these things being the things we need to develop. That makes sense? So for yourself, yes, you know, that's why you guys are going, like, you got a passion for art? Do some. You know, you got love swimming. Go swimming. You love running. Go running. You love, bouncing on a trampoline. Go bounce on the trampoline. You know, they're trying to encourage you to feel so that you have a part of your soul open to the feelings.
So disco dancing just popped in my head. So
disco dancing, yeah. 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 And for some people it might be line dancing or country or who knows. Something that makes you feel, something. And you'll find any person who's connected to God's love in the spirit world, who's guiding you, will be encouraging you towards taking action so that you open up to your feelings and sensations and emotions and also your beliefs and your passions and your desires. So they're trying to help you in a lot of different ways. They're trying to help you with your beliefs and your desires and your passions and your longings and what brings you joy. And all for the one purpose to help you open up your soul to the experience so that you can begin to experience God.
It's so simple.
Yep.
And we make it so complex.
We do. Mostly, though, because of the other things identified in the message.
Yeah.
We have pain and we have suffering and we try to avoid all that. So the trouble with opening your soul to all these good things is your soul's going to start opening to some of those what you believe are bad things too, which is the reason why you suppressed your soul. The pain and suffering that your soul experiences will also be opened to. And the average person goes, I don't want that. That's really uncomfortable. So I don't want to do that. So they don't want to embrace a passionate life with other things. Yep. So yes, music, dancing, art. Like some of you it'd be engineering brings you passion. Some of you it'd be building brings you passion. Some of you it'll be all sorts of things, and your guides will be encouraging you to go, open up there, open up there, open up there. Because you open up in these different ways, you might open up enough of your soul to feel some of God's love.
Thank you.
It's good, eh?
It's really good.
It is good, yeah.
Yeah, Philippa. And then over here. Just pass it down the end of the row.
I think many of us who are intellectual, hands up, including me.
I mean everybody.
Everybody.
Almost, yeah.
I've been in situations in my life where I feel like I'm more in that soul place, and then it gets, scary. So I wonder if there's a glimpse at what does it actually look like or feel like to be in that place? Because I can't imagine almost a life without the thoughts.
Yeah. Well, most of us don't understand really that we use our thoughts a lot because we're afraid of our feelings a lot, right? And, this is a big problem that we face on earth. It's also a problem in your beginning life in the spirit world as well when you pass. If you've used your intellect a lot to suppress bad feelings in particular, then, of course, when you have a feeling of any kind, it's like a surprise. And then you had the feeling, and if it was a good one, you go, how do I have that one again? But it was so surprising you didn't even know how you had it, right? And this is how a lot of us are functioning at the moment. We're functioning in a very soul-based shut-down state, which then means that I'm shut down towards the reception of anybody's love, including God's, by the way. So I'm even shut down towards partner love, God's love. This is why many of you are living alone, because you shut down a lot of functionality of your soul, right? To do that, you got to. The average person living alone feels quite sad, but they don't want to feel sad, so they don't want to feel that. But in suppressing that, we're also suppressing the functionality of our soul that feels good things. You know, you can't hope to suppress bad feelings while at the same time not having some of the other feelings suppressed, unfortunately. These are, you could call all of these faculties of the soul. And if you try to suppress, like aspiration, for example, then in one area, then aspiration in many areas will be suppressed. If you try to suppress emotion in one area, then emotion in many areas will be suppressed. If you try to suppress the soul's thoughts, which are all to do with emotions and longings, in one area, then what will happen is your thoughts will be suppressed in many areas. You'll dull down your own mind's capability of even thinking. To the point, people do it to the point of Alzheimer's. To the point where they're not even conscious of their own thought anymore. Right? This is the effect of denial of the soul. These things all happen for that reason. So, you know, by heavily suppressing these parts of ourselves, which is the real, like I said, the real me, by heavily suppressing it, I am actually working to my own disadvantage, but I actually think it's to my advantage because it's also suppressing pain. Right? And this is why it's never good to suppress pain of any kind, physical, emotional, or spiritual pain. Never good. Sexual pain, never good to suppress any of it. Because when you do, you're going to start suppressing other things. The functionality of your own soul is going to start to get suppressed. Right? Makes sense, Philippa?
Yeah, and
Yep.
so if you're having in the place where you're more connected with your soul, if you're having a desire, it's almost like you're automatically following that desire rather than having a thought and the fear pop in.
It's not only automatically following desire, you plan for the desire, you plot and, you know, like, it's like if you have a desire to build a house, what do?
Well, you start figuring out what you might want.
You investigate, you know, how the house is going to look, the design, the engineering, the how you're going to furnish it. Like if you are interested in it at all, you'll investigate so many things, won't you? So it's the same with the soul. Whatever the soul's interested in, it's not just going to go, oh, I just have a longing. It's going to be not only a longing, I'm planning, I'm scheming, I'm doing...
It's like an obsession almost.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily a obsession in the sense of an addiction obsession, but it's an obsession in the sense of it's going to be your primary thing you think about, feel about. You know, I don't know how many of you have actually bought a house? I know in England now it's pretty hard, right? Pretty pricey. Yep. Now, when you were doing it, it took up a lot of your feelings, didn't it? And your thoughts and your day, you're investigating, you're looking and trying to find the ideal thing, and you're doing all of that, right? That's because your soul had a longing to do it. And so you did all of that. So this is why anything that brings that kind of a longing, as long as it's in harmony with love, is going to be beneficial to you. Because it forms a part of opening up your soul to your true self, your true nature. So part of this, of course, includes your personality. And this is an area, if you just hold that for me, I'll just write that down, because this is an area where many of you are heavily suppressed. We're taught in society at a very young age that if my personality is different to yours, then I'm strange. And that we all need to become very similar to each other in order to not feel strange to each other. And this kind of thing is a heavy suppression of the soul's function. Because God designed personality in the soul as a part of your being, as a part of how to recognise you as a person who's different to somebody else. And that personality becomes your name, actually. It's like in the spirit world, in the celestial kingdom, there's not really names, there's just personalities. Right? So the personality jam, Jesus and Mary, right, has a personality. And it's recognisable to every other person who's met us. You follow? And that personality is different to your personality. And I'm including your soulmate as the other half of that. Right? It's all unique. And so every time you choose to suppress your personality, you know, like if you You want to wear red today, but you wear black. There's a suppression of your personality. That's why I wear. It's my personality. Yeah? And so this is how it is with everything else. You start realising, I'm suppressing my personality in lots of different ways. And by suppressing your personality, you are suppressing your soul, your feelings of your soul, your emotions, your aspirations. Every aspiration you have is infected, you could say, not in a bad way, but infected or governed by your personality. The direction in which you take it will be unique to you. So I might have a desire to build a house, and Philippa might have a desire to build a house. We're going to build two totally different things. Yeah. Now, you probably like mine more. Just being cheeky. Sure. But, but you will have a love for your own. You will feel your personality in what you've designed. Yeah? Yeah.
Thank you.
So how in England here you've got a whole heap of homes which are all like little boxes on the hillside, and every one of them is like 2-story, 3-story, but it's small. Every room is small. That's not your personality. It's your injuries that cause you to build such things. Yep. So you can see where we are at the moment. We're staying in this place that's a new development, and it's just house after house after house getting built there. And the developer, Taylor, somebody, Whitney or whatever, has obviously come up with a boilerplate template of what they feel is good to build because it's cheap and easy to build. And so what they've done is they've done all of that, and then you have to make it your own somehow. And how do you do that? You do that by decorating, you call it. Yeah, but that's not the house.
No.
That's you just trying to change the house into your personality.
And it's funny because we go for a walk in the neighbourhood, and the housing is quite small and compact, but then I can feel how everyone's trying to make it their own, and so you sort of see sometimes through windows and there is like so much stuff packed in there, like knickknacks and decorations, just to make it your own, but it ends up then sort of overpowering you.
But you guys are building small houses, right?
Yeah.
When I say small rooms, and it's really weird because you don't need to, because a lot of the buildings are quite large, but you're building these tiny rooms in these buildings when you really want an open space, and you could easily build it differently, get rid of a few walls and all that. But to do that, it would cost maybe a little bit more, and they don't want to do that. So this is where personality gets sacrificed by money. Right? It's a common thing. Yeah. Where are we up to? Questions? We're over here.
LS over here. Yeah.
So does everyone get that whole idea of personality important? Be your personality. Many of you are very shy about that. Don't want to be your personality. Don't want to show your true feelings to anybody because you think they're going to get knocked about and attacked and belittled. And they have been. So that's a part of the pain that needs to be felt. Yeah?
I always thought that God's system of opening up souls is through crisis, personal crisis.
Well, remember we said earlier that pain can create desires, but it's not God's system of opening up the soul, no. God would prefer to use other methods. But unfortunately, the law which God created, obviously, when I say unfortunately, it's fortunate actually, that God's law has been created so that when you have pain in your soul, it has to come out somehow. And so when you have pain in your soul, you will attract events that need those painful events to bring the pain out of your soul. But that's a function of the law, not God's. God's intention is that you're free of those. And so how do you grow when you're not in pain? Is the real question. Because all of you at some point, if you follow my advice, you'll be celestial spirits one day, right? You won't have any pain. Physical, emotional, spiritual, sexual, no pain. So how are you going to grow then? It's only by desiring. It's by accessing these soul-based faculties, isn't it? That's how you'll grow. So many of you get worried about the pain part of it, but the pain part of it's temporary. but it's not purposefully designed to just traumatize you. It's designed so that you make changes that cause you an alleviation of pain, right? But many of you actually make changes that don't alleviate your pain and actually cause you to store it longer. So an example of that is I need to cry, but I don't let myself, right? That's me. I have pain. I don't want to feel it. So what I do instead, I suppress it. In suppressing it, I'm now suppressing soul faculties that could be benefiting me in other areas, but because I no longer want to cry, because I'm obviously afraid of my sadness, or I feel it's too bad to feel, or I have demands about my sadness that other people make it go away, or whatever, that will cause me to no longer have an aspiration to feel other feelings as well. Right? And then my soul gets depressed, so sad, depressed. When it gets depressed, it gets angry. Many people on earth are walking around with a lot of anger because we've suppressed our sadness so much, and we're in a depressed state of anger. You understand the difference between that and a violent state of anger? A violent state of anger is where we express our rage to everybody and sundry. A suppressed state of anger is, I'm good, no worries, you're good, I'm good. You know, suppress everything, not face up to the truth of anything. So that's something we've got to be very careful of doing because we're suppressing our soul. See, when you understand what the soul is, you also understand how to not suppress it, how to let it live, right? How to let it grow. Right? When you don't understand the soul properly, and this is why education is so important, if you don't understand the soul properly, you will be taught through experience and also through your own avoidance of pain. You'll teach yourself to suppress it. Yep. An intelligent society wouldn't do that. Wouldn't ever choose to suppress emotional pain. We would choose to feel it in a loving way instead of suppress it. Yeah. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Yep. So when it comes to your aspirations and your desires and your passions and longings, the worst thing you can do is suppress them. When it comes to your feelings, your emotions, your senses, the worst thing you can do is suppress them. Because every time you do, you are shutting down the openness of your soul. You're shutting down its ability to function. Right? Very important to understand that. And in doing that, you are going to shut down your ability to feel anything from anyone, including God. You're not going to be able to feel things from God. Even if you had a longing or had a thought to have a longing, because by this stage you've suppressed all your longings. If you had a thought to have a longing, nothing can be received because you're not open yet, right? And this is why we need God's laws and other people and emotions, and we need situations and we need life experience in order to open us up emotionally. God designed your life to be an emotional, passionate life. If it's not that, then it's because it's been shut down, either by you or someone else. So open it up. Yep. Perry?
And just over here.
Oh, sorry, we're over there first and then Perry.
When praying to God, how important is it to have a clear or defined understanding of what God is?
It's not very important, to be honest, because at the beginning when you start praying, you haven't received enough of God's love or God's truth to understand what God is. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like as you develop the relationship, God will share with you as you desire. God will share with you an understanding of what she is. Right? Until you receive the love, you won't understand it anyway. We can talk about God a lot, and we will do in the future a lot. But you won't understand God yet, emotionally understand God. You'll see it as an intellectual concept, but not understand it emotionally until you feel God. Like, till you feel God's feelings and feel God's, what God feels is right and what God feels is wrong, and what God feels is loving and what God feels isn't, what God's desires are versus when he doesn't have one in that direction. So he doesn't have any evil desires. So, when you have an evil desire and you ask God about it, God's pretty definite about it, about what they are. But you will get to know God as a part of the process, right? Mm-hmm. You can't understand something that is infinite, ever. God's infinite. You will not ever be able to truly understand God. God will share with you, to the ability you currently have based on how much your soul has changed, God can share with you parts of herself. But it's never going to be the whole of herself, because you won't have the capacity to do that. To do that, you'd have to be God. And you're never going to be God. No matter what all these New Age people tell you, whatever the Buddhists might tell you, you are never going to be God. You will have a part of God in you as you receive love, and as a part of that, you will receive other things from God as well, and as a part of that, you will get to know what God is then. And so, partially, it's about the child, which is what we are, right? We're all just little babies. Imagine your child, if you had a child. Does the child understand you? Right? And this is the way you've got to think about it. At the beginning of your relationship with God, you've got to go, I want to understand my parent, and that's what creates desire, aspiration, longing, passion to do such a thing. But don't be surprised if there's a lot you do not understand. Right? Just like a little child can't understand its parent straight away. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm also getting more answers as I listen to what you're speaking about in terms of the soul.
Yep.
What I'm realizing is maybe because I'm so in my mind, in my head,
yep,
it's the mind that seeks to understand. So maybe if I was more in my soul, I probably wouldn't have that need or desire to understand, and then I could...
Yeah, the irony is, though, the soul has a greater capacity to understand emotionally than the mind does intellectually.
But we can say that the mind, the fearful mind, has a desire to know before experiencing, whereas the soul experiences and then has a deeper understanding anyway. Yeah. So yes, when we're in our mind and on the earth at the moment, it's very fear-based mind thinking that we have. We often want to understand before we take what we perceive to be a risk to experience something. Yeah.
So a lot of times we're in our mind because of fear. And it's really substantially fear of what emotions we might feel. Yeah. So a lot of times I see many of you doing that. You want to know from somebody else, what do I believe about this? What do I feel about that? You're asking these questions a lot. And that's a lot because you're afraid of actually going there yourself. In other words, you're afraid of your own soul.
Which is
and what it contains. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, some of what your soul contains at the moment is going to be sin because you're all being brought up in an environment of sin. So some of it's going to be painful things that it contains. And we just have to get used to that while we're working way through issues. We have to get used to the fact, here we go, another painful thing that was stored in my soul from whatever event or situation that I either chose or somebody else around me chose to affect me with. And we've got to let ourselves have that experience. And after a while, because you get to the stage where you feel, I am not going to shut down my soul for anyone or anything, including for the sake of my own mind. So, for many of you, you think you're crazy if you feel a feeling. Well, that's your mind screaming, saying, don't go there, don't go there. That's the mind. And many of us are doing that to ourselves even. We're shutting down, for the sake of our mind's what we call sanity, we've shut down our feelings. And ironically, that's the thing that causes insanity. There are many people in the spirit world and on earth who are actually literally insane because they've done that. Because they've shut down their feelings to the point where now their mind and their feelings are so opposite each other, they have no connection whatsoever with reality anymore. Right? Don't do that. It's a dangerous thing to yourself to do that. Make sense? So yeah, many of us are so connected with the mind that we're doing this sort of naturally, but we've got to be careful, because for many of us, this is why things like Alzheimer's and other diseases like that, so-called, are occurring more and more prevalently on earth, because more and more people are using their mind to shut down their soul experience rather than feel it. So we've got to learn to embrace our soul in order to embrace God, the process of prayer. We can't embrace God without embracing our soul. This is the beautiful thing about it. God is not saying to you, you can shut down you, but I'll give you love still. He's saying, you can't shut down you. Shutting down you is shutting down the pinnacle of my creation. Why? Like, from God's perspective, you're doing a major blasphemy by doing that. You understand? From God's perspective, you shutting down you is like saying to God, I don't care how you made me. I don't care that you made me to feel and all these other things. I don't care about all that, but I still want your love. And God's going, no, I want you to care about how I made you. Because that's the way you're going to enjoy life, by being that. You know, He wants you to be happy, and He knows that every time you disconnect from your soul, you will not be happy. You won't. And God knows that. And so when you want to shut down your soul, and God's going, no, I'm not into that. I'm not allowing you to shut down your soul. In fact, God created so many laws that every person who ever gets anything where they just go crazy, or even Alzheimer's or other things, they all get cured from those things, because that at some point in their future they will be forced by the law into feeling. Isn't that wonderful? You can end this world in a mental home or a Alzheimer's, totally unconscious of anything you're doing, and then in some point in the future, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to be healed from that condition, just because the law is going to drag you into a place where you accept you have a soul. You accept you have feelings and desires and passions that you need to feel. Yeah?
Thank you.
Yep. Perry.
Yeah, my question is a little bit of a follow-on to that, actually.
Yep.
Oftentimes when I'm working in the garden by myself at work, I'll feel like impressions that I've been manoeuvred, or prompts that feel like they're prompting me. And I'll be working away and I'm not realising I'm maybe having a conversation.
Yep.
And then it feels sometimes like I'll get into some emotions, but it will feel like a prayer has been prompted, but not really by me, but like from an outside influence.
Yeah, well, you got to remember that many of your spirit friends want you to experience what they experience. What they experience, many of them, bliss is what they experience, like constant. And they want you to have the same experience. So how do they influence you to have the same experience? They influence you in moments where you're unconscious often of the influence.
That's what it feels like.
They influence you to do this or go there or go there. And why is it when you're walking along the road, sometimes you want to turn left and you go, and other times you want to go here or you want to go there and you go, and then that brought you an experience of some kind, sometimes not a happy one, but a triggering one to let you feel emotion. And so they are working towards opening your soul. Right? That's one of the forces at play, helping you to open your soul. And after a while, you sort of learn to go along with it.
That was part of the question as well, is like you can trust that, and then eventually, instead of being unconscious, you can consciously go, that's my guide.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying to go along with it in every case.
Okay.
Because I didn't say that. I said sometimes you learn to go along with it. Now, why wouldn't I go along with it? Because surrounding you, there's not only bright spirits, but there's also dark spirits. And also, from your soul, there's not only loving things, but there's also unloving things. Yeah. You have unloving desires in your soul, and some spirits around you have the same unloving desires. So what are they going to do? They're going to influence you to go along with your unloving desires. So at some point, you're going to have to learn to measure your desires. Measure whether your aspirations are loving or not. How do you measure it? Well, if you have a connection with God, it's easy. You can ask God, and with the conscience, you have a connection with the conscience, you can ask that conscience, that's asking God whether this thing is loving or not, right? If it's loving, then you'll allow yourself to be guided. If it's unloving, you will stop yourself from doing it. And instead feel why the unloving longing, the evil loves, are present. Does that make sense, Perry?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
So not every inspiration you receive is a loving one. If you look at the earth today, most of the inspiration you receive are unloving ones. You get inspiration from your mobile phones, from a machine, like an AI. Do you think the programmer of the AI was loving? The whole idea of creating an AI is unloving. So do you think the programmer of the AI is loving? No, he's not. So every time you're influenced by one, you're influenced by an unloving source, right? Yeah. Someone said to me once, emailed to us and said, I've done a really good thing. I've created an AI Jesus that will answer. Oh, no. Like, the worst possible thing to do. And, and this is a problem, is that we often get influenced by our own evil longings, and these evil longings even cause us to create evil things that then influence other people in an evil manner. So that's how Facebook got created, right? An evil longing of one person made a program got created, it interfaced with the evil longings of other people, the addictions of other people. That's how it became a worldwide phenomenon in a few years, right? It was all done from an evil place because it was all about addictions. And addictions, I said, were evil loves, right? All out of harmony with God's love. And so if you look at it, the whole world today is bombarding you with evil loves, encouraging you to have evil loves. Yep, can we have that phone or wherever it is? Thanks. Encouraging you towards evil loves, right? And the reason why they are is because they know that your soul is motivated by feelings and passions and aspirations, and they can push it in the direction of evil if you have certain tendencies within yourself, right? Not good for your soul, but it's better you following an evil love than it is you following none at all, in a way, isn't it? Because if you follow none at all, you just shut down altogether, right? But I would recommend that both of them are no good. Following a loving love is good.
Can we say we explore our evil loves not through action but through humility?
Yep.
That's very important. I see a lot of people, after they hear divine truth, they hear intellectually the truth about soulmates, they're like, right, all sexuality is now off the cards. I'm not even going to remember that I have sexual organs.
Shut them down completely.
Yep. And there we go, I'm not sinning. And actually, that's a big sin. That's a big sin to shut down
because you're now running your body in the way God did not intend.
Yeah. Whereas if you allow your sexuality without acting on it, while you're exploring what your loves are sexually, what your loving desires might be and what your injured desires might be, now you can start to be in a process with God and to grow and to heal those injuries within yourself. Yeah. But so let's explore our evil loves without acting and go passionately in the direction of our loving loves. Yeah.
Yep. Makes sense, Barry? Yep. Yeah. Yep. Where do you want to go?
Well, actually, Jesus, yesterday we had a brief discussion about... Yeah, we did. One of many.
Was it last night?
Last night.
Before bed.
Before bed. And I just thought, because you're now talking about this fourth paragraph, which is, I pray that you will open up my soul to the inflowing of your love. We talked about how to open a heart that's been shut down, and you've touched on many of the things. Will I just recap the list?
Sure.
Yeah. And you can elucidate?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one of the first things you said was actually to recognise my sin.
Yep.
So when we've reached a place where our heart is shut down, then to recognise our sin is a very important part of opening up our heart.
But it's also important to even understand that shutting it down is a sin in itself.
Yes.
It's going to have negative consequences in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And part of the way this discussion started was that we were talking about the fact that for many years I would talk about what is open. I need to open my heart. I need to open my heart to God, to love. I'm so closed-hearted. But I didn't really understand what that process would be like. What's it like to actually open a heart that's been shut down? And so we started to talk about the different things to do to open your heart, to soften it, to start this longing process. And so, as Jesus said, recognising firstly my heart is shut down and that's a sin. That's not how I was created to be. But then recognising my sin. Because a lot of the times we've shut our heart because we didn't want to feel the pain, that we made choices to not feel pain all the way through our life. And then we reach a point where we're shut down, and as Jesus was saying earlier, we can't even feel our passions and aspirations that are not even sinful anymore. Mm-hmm. So recognising our sin was one of the first things. Do you want to add to
No,
that
you
point?
keep going.
Okay. And then the second point that you've been talking about a lot just now is recognising the help that I'm receiving to open my heart that comes from an external source. Mm. So, and you've already touched on the way that God, through her laws, but also just through her personal desires for you, is influencing, arranging so many circumstances in our life to help this heart opening to happen. So, and also this is a part too, I feel, of humility, because often we arrogantly think, oh, I'm the creator of my whole existence and I get things done. And we don't often acknowledge that there's a lot of loving helpers around us in the form of our spirit friends, in the form of just even God's laws that aren't individuals, but they're operating around us to help us to open our heart. But as Jesus said earlier, you must be discerning about that. You have to recognise help for help and recognise evil love influences for evil love influences. Yeah. The other important thing, and you already touched on this again this morning, but this I feel was almost crucial, that feel the truth that I can't be more loving without education from a higher source. And it's got to be a source higher than the other people on earth. Because all the other people on earth aren't in a more or less, we're all in the same state, aren't we? And it's all more or less a mess. And so I must recognise that I need help from a higher source. And can you, even if you just sit with that statement, can you feel that has almost an opening effect, doesn't it? Yeah.
In the Paget messages, we said that very often, where we said the river can't flow higher than its source. Many of you might have read that already. And the reason why we said that is that, the source, even in your perfection, even if you were a perfect human, you are not higher than God. You are much lower than God. You are a creation, a creature of God. So even as a perfect human, you are still not a very high source of love. And, this is the problem. Unless we recognise that to be a higher source of love than a human, we need to connect to the source of love that is higher than a human. And the only one that's an entity higher than a human is God. We are the pinnacle of all creation aside from God. God is not a creation. We are a creation, the pinnacle of all. And as a result, we can only get to receive more love by connecting to the higher source of that love. It's just you could say, a physics principle, isn't it? The principle of physics. How can you learn something that you don't know unless you learn it from somebody who knows? This is why you go to university, guys, right? You go to university or go to school because somebody else knows more than you do, and you go and you learn from them because they know more. So what is the same principle applies. God knows the most. God knows everything. So it makes sense to connect to God about everything. It's just a logical sense. To me, it sort of is, why wouldn't you do it?
One of the reasons we don't do it is because we think there is no higher source of love than ourselves, than our own definitions. So one of the other things we talked about was that we must be willing to confront our own definitions of love. Am I willing to look at what I think love is and assess that and say, how does God actually feel about that? Does God have a different opinion about that? Most of the time, most of us live our whole life on earth defending our false definitions of love. And that's why God can't reach us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we have feelings inside of us that are opposite to God's feelings of love. Yeah, so, last night we were talking about what we were just
talking.
Not about what we were going to discuss with you, but I was just talking to Mary about these things because it just feels to me that the average person on earth isn't in a very humble state. They sort of have this belief that somehow they can become more loving than without connecting to someone who's a more loving source. And it's just a physical impossibility. From a physics perspective, it's impossible mathematically to connect to something that's to be more loving. You're going to have to connect to something that's of a higher condition of love than yourself, right? And God's the guaranteed higher condition of love than yourself. Right? Other people might try to fake it with you. Many people do nowadays, right? Try to fake a connection with you one way or the other for all sorts of malicious and sometimes evil, but most of the time self-absorbed purposes. But at the end of the day, they're not God, so of course they might do that. Yeah. And it's important to not feel disappointed that somebody you trusted turned out to be unloving to you. Because at the end of the day, why didn't you expect it? Because, no one on earth even in their pure condition of love, without sin, is going to necessarily feel things to be in your interest like God does. Right? And this is what we need to come to sort of accept emotionally inside of ourselves in order to connect with God,
A lot of us want to be our own authority, or we want to rebel against authority, and this is another massive block to God. We don't want to even emotionally, in our emotions, acknowledge that God is a higher source of wisdom, love, truth than ourselves.
Everything.
Yeah.
Our very life comes from him. So why wouldn't you want to connect to the source of your very life? It's one of the things we need to consider, you see, because we often, the very first injury that the people you know of as Adam and Eve acted upon was the injury of wanting to be God themselves. And in doing that, they had to shut down the potentialities of their soul to a large degree in order to accomplish that task, and had to become disconnected from God in order to accomplish that task, in order to feel that they were God in their own right and they could do their own thing. They had to do that. And so this is why most of the earth now is in this state of shutdown towards God. Right? Whenever we talk about God, it's interesting, Mary and I go to through airports often, right, and through customs, right? And customs is really interesting because they always ask us, why are we here? And so we're here, we tell them why we're here. We're here to teach about divine truth and divine love. Oh, so you're a religion then? No. How can you not be a religion but talk about God? Well, God's independent of religion. God doesn't need religion to express himself. And God's a scientific fact. Religion is just theories. So these are the discussions we have with the customs officials.
Or sometimes we have the discussion, why are you here? Oh, we're here to give some seminars. Oh, are you charging for that? No, it's free. Oh, right, what do you talk about? Oh, how to have a connection to God. Whoa. Then everything changes. Yep.
Yeah. Then there's no questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh, have you got paperwork? Yep.
You got paperwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Can we block your paperwork?
we feel the feelings on earth about God. You know,
Complex.
they're complicated for everyone.
Yep.
You know.
Complex.
Yeah. But now when I read this part of the prayer which says, I pray that you will open up my soul to the inflowing of your love. Now it's less about, oh God, come and knock on my door and open me up, push me. It's, when I read that now I feel, God, I want to be a part of this process that you've designed all around me, all this help. Okay, I'm with you in this. You know, I'm going to stop fighting that. I'm praying that this opening up process, I'm going to participate now.
Rather than shutting it down.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fighting it or demanding you come and open up my heart.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things you can do to participate. Seek truth. Seek love in your personal lives. Seek relationships. Seek friendships. Seek passions and desires that you have. These will all help you to open up your heart. Right? Don't live an alone life. Don't just be alone all the time. Don't distance yourself from people. Express your personality and your nature. Do it on purpose.
And even you talked this morning about the ability to have conflict. Stay in an uncomfortable conflict without being aggressive, without being unloving, but stay there and feel.
Work it out. Yeah. No, don't run away from it.
This helps to keep your heart open.
Yeah. Make sense? Yeah. Nellie?
So this part of opening up our soul, it's really essential for receiving God's love, right? This essential part.
Essential.
Yeah.
Yep. You can't have feelings for God without having feelings, just generally. You can't have emotions for God without having emotions generally. You can't have desires for God without having desires generally.
I always sort of have this visual of like shutters on a window, you know, and if I'm inside the house and God's outside, my longing is like the breeze that opens the shutters, and that's what allows God's love to come in. If it's still closed, God's love can't enter, like the sunlight can't enter, you know, but my longing, my open heart has to open in order for it to come in.
And God designed it purposefully that way, so that you learnt that everything is dependent upon your will and your desire.
How powerful a creation you are.
Yeah. He wants all of you to understand you are the pinnacle of his creation. What's the very first? Not the very first, it's the second paragraph, say.
I know that I am the greatest of your creations and the most wonderful of all your handiworks and the object of your great soul's love and tenderest care. Yeah,
he wants you to know that. He wants you to know how good he made you, how clever he was making you. He wants you to understand how complex you are.
Are you saying God showed off when he made her?
Yeah, no, he's perfectly happy showing off. making this wonderful creation, right? Yeah? He's impressed by his own creation. Does that make sense? He is.
It's like when you do an awesome painting and you say, come and look, Tim.
Didn't I do
awesome?
Didn't I do good, right? You know, he's doing that. Didn't I do good? I made such a wonderful creature. And not only that, the immensity of what he's created is amazing, because he actually created a creature that's capable of receiving a part of himself. Rather than it just being a normal creation, which is just an invention of his mind, he made a creation which is capable of actually feeling his feelings. That's a pretty amazing thing to create, if you think about it. Have you ever created something, aside, and your children aren't your creations, by the way, have you ever created something that's capable of feeling your feelings? That's a pretty amazing thing to do, if you think about it. Your car doesn't feel your feelings. You know, your house doesn't feel your feelings in the sense that it can't feel. It doesn't have a soul to feel. But God created you in his image so that you could feel. So when you shut down your feelings and your emotions, you're shutting down the very design that God created so that you could enjoy yourself. It's pretty amazing when you think about it, that God was so clever in his design of the human that he created a being that's capable of growing beyond its original creative purpose. You can receive a part of God into you to the point where you become immortal as God is. That's how amazing a gift it is. It's just it's an incredible design. Your soul is so well designed, and this is why the second paragraph is so important to the prayer, because at some point we all must understand that we are not a creature of sin. Sin isn't our boss. Our unloving behaviour is not our boss. We are the boss of our own sin. We are the boss of our own actions. We need to come to understand how powerful we are as humans. We can change things. You know, like I said earlier in this discussion, this morning, it can only change if we become more loving, but we can become more loving. We can do that. Like, we do not need anybody else to do it for us. We can do it for ourselves. Right? And when I say we don't need anybody else to do it for us, what I mean is there's no other person on earth who can do it for you. You can receive love from God and you will become a more loving person as a result. It's guaranteed. It's got a infinity lifetime guarantee. Not just a 5-year one. Yeah. Yeah. James? If you leave your hand up. So. Thanks.
Is it possible to have a discrepancy between how open we are between our spirit body and our physical body? Like I sort of feel like I have experiences in the spirit world that indicate I'm much more open than I am in my physical reality.
Certainly, because the reason why this kind of event occurs is because there are certain beliefs that you have in your physical state that you've retained because of emotions. From emotions, that you are forced into letting go in your spirit state because it's obvious to you. Do you understand what I mean by that? Not quite. So let's say you are basically a person who's living in the spirit world for a portion of your life. You know, every time you're asleep, you're there permanently. Here, you're living in the physical world, right? The soul is present in the spirit world when you're asleep, and present with you here when you're awake. You follow? In your spirit state, you have spirit eyes that see things. They see things you do not see now in your physical state. Things you haven't been able to see and you don't trust in your physical state. But even though the emotion is present in your soul that you don't trust them, in your spirit state, you're forced into seeing them. Which means now you're in two different states. Make sense? You're in two different states because in your spirit body, you're forced to see it. In your physical state, you don't have to see it. And now it's just a matter of when is your spirit state your physical state going to reflect your spirit state? Well, that will happen when your soul feeling changes about that thing. Does that make sense, James? What I'm explaining is a fairly complicated concept, but it's very important in some ways to understand because if you can sort of grasp that, sometimes many of you, when we talk with you, sometimes you talk about your spirit experiences and you go, oh, the fact that I had that spirit experience means that I don't really have that injury. That's not true. The fact you had the spirit experience is because in your spirit state you were forced into the experience because of your senses being open to that experience, when in your emotional state, your soul state, you don't want to know about it. Make sense?
Yeah.
So there's some bad things that are happening to you, many of you, in your spirit state that you don't want to know about. But you're forced into having those experiences because you can see them in the spirit state. Make sense to you? And there are some good things, by the way, that happen in your spirit state that you also don't want to know about because it would trigger pain. It would trigger grief that you don't want to feel here. The contrast of the two states would be so great for you that you'd have to cry. And many of us don't want to. Right?
Sometimes we can be sensitive to the grief that we've not yet felt in our awake state, almost feel like we're feeling it in our sleep state. That's because our spirit, we're just having a bit more connection to how
our soul feels. And in our spirit form, we feel that more intensely as well. Yep. So we can often have the memory on waking of, oh, wow, I'm so sad. Oh, I need to cry, But for some reason I can't.
But for some reason now I'm here, I'm not. Yeah. But I know I need to. And it almost feels like I was doing it and it was so good. Yep. But it's not actually leaving our soul. It's just us. And in a way, we can see it as a help. It's okay. To
show you the truth of what you need to feel.
I know this is in me. Why am I not letting it out of me in my awake state? Yeah.
Yeah, I've experienced that quite extreme, like being sobbing, and then the second I wake up, it's
You're not sobbing.
Not sobbing.
And you can't hardly even connect to the reason why you were sobbing. Yeah. And that's because the emotion is still present in the soul, but in your spirit state, it's obvious. Through the senses of the spirit body, it's obvious, and so you're triggered into feeling it there, but not here.
Yeah. And so you can thank your sleep state, thank your spirit self for signalling to you.
It does help you to release some things, by the way.
Yeah. Yep. But it's also it also helps for you to gain awareness of, wow, I must be doing a lot to avoid this in my everyday life.
Because I was gutted.
This was gutting, and now here I am, I feel like I'm not allowed to or I can't access it. There must be a lot I've done to shut that down, to numb out. Yeah.
Thank you.
G'day.
Bex, is
Bex?
It? Yep.
So you guys mentioned with desire and prayer, being in the world and trying things and being around people. So inevitably, while we're in this condition, we'll make mistakes, we need to experiment, and we'll fail. Yep. So the problem I see is like we've all been punished for...
Yeah.
Just stop. Mistakes are not failure.
Yes. This is the injury, isn't it? Yeah.
To believe such a thing is an injury emotionally. Mistakes are good for you. It's a way you learn.
You can say, we'll make mistakes, we miss the mark. But that's not failure, because failure, I just give up, everything's over. That's not happened, has it?
No. So just be careful about the idea that a mistake is a failure. You need to start to see that mistakes are a part of life where you can learn from them and change direction, right? And not be so attacking on yourself about them. We're uneducated children. How does an uneducated child become educated? By firstly learning from others, but then also by having some experiences, some of which might end up being mistakes that we need to learn from, right? So don't avoid life because you're avoiding mistakes. It's good to assess a decision, whether it's loving to your own capacity at the time. In other words, don't run headlong into everything thinking that everything's good, because it won't work either. But you need to at least be able to assess and go, does this feel loving to me or not? But if it does, why not embrace it? And if it turns out that it's an evil love, then the feedback system of the law is going to tell you straight away.
Well, we can't get too close. Something's buzzing.
Ironically, that was my question because...
something happened there.
Yeah, there's feedback. Yeah.
Oh, they're on.
Are they?
Was it coming from there? Oh, okay. We need to find out how to turn them off. I'll do that later.
Anyway, sorry.
Sorry. Ironically, that was pretty much my question, but also in Australia, I observed you guys and some of the managers have a very healthy relationship with mistakes.
Yep.
And I noticed...
You want to make as many as you can.
Yep. And when you make
It's
them, the worst thing you can do is withdraw. You know, it's almost like a wasted mistake. You're going to have to make it again and learn how to course correct and keep growing. But if you just like, boom, oh, this went wrong, and withdraw, then it's wasted.
Yeah, a person who lives their life avoiding mistakes is probably not doing anything.
Yeah.
Aren't they?
Nothing.
How do you avoid a mistake? If you haven't learnt anything, how do you avoid making a mistake? You know, you've got to make them. The key is to make them and learn from them.
And desire, does that come into when you make a mistake, you can desire to learn from it and move on?
Yeah, well, it's logical to learn from it. You know, you see the mistake. Like, sometimes I go, like I've designed something and I build it and then I go, gee, I made a mistake. My studio that I built, you know, I said to Mary, I made a lot of mistakes.
It's pretty good still.
It's okay, you know, we use it and we're using it more now, but at the end of the day, I could have designed it with some other features in the same space almost that would have made it a lot easier for me now to run the studio. But I made some mistakes. I've learnt from them. I'm not going to do them again. Make sense?
One of the biggest mistakes of my life is when I've made mistakes, I've blamed the good part of my personality or my desire
for taking the
action. And that has delayed me so much in my life.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest mistake. So I don't recommend it. I advise you do something different to that. Learn from your mistakes, course correct.
And also so from God's point of view, a true mistake is when you weren't loving. But even that you can learn from, can't you? Yeah. Right. So it's good to try to avoid unlovingness, you know, on your part. But as I've said, all of us have been taught to be unloving right from our conception, fundamentally. So naturally, we're going to have unloving parts of us that we're going to have to deal with, and we're going to have to let them go. So if you have an attitude, make as many mistakes as I can, learn from them as fast as I can.
Yeah. Every time there's a mistake, go, oh, excellent, more information.
Yeah. Many of you have a judgmental attitude towards your mistakes and also a fear based on what they've now caused. Well, you can fix it. So if I wanted to fix my mistaken studio, I could knock it down or make adjustments to it, can't I? I can fix it if I wish to. But I just want to now learn from that and build a better one. Right? But because the old one's still functional. So I feel if I knock it down, then I won't have the functionality of it for a few years at least, right? So it's better to leave it as it is, use it as its original intended purpose, but then learn from it for the next one. Yeah. So you don't have to punish yourself for mistakes, and God, by the way, doesn't punish you for true mistakes. There's no law. When you make a mistake, a true mistake, you don't actually break many laws at all.
And if you refine your will in terms of love, once you've made the mistake, you actually get rewarded. Because you've taken the experience and you have grown in love from it. So there's a reward for that. Yeah. So if you're a sincere person aiming for love but missing the mark, but course correcting each time, there's continual rewards. And the way we treat ourselves is often, punish, to the point where we withdraw from the desire. And then we can't even receive the rewards of the law or from God. Yeah.
So mistakes, good.
Yeah. More mistakes.
More mistakes. Want to see you making lots of mistakes.
Want to
and learning from them.
Report of mistakes next time we come.
No, I don't.
No time. No time.
I've got enough mistakes of my own rather than worry about yours.
And you'll have made so many we won't have time to hear them.
That's right, yeah. You'll have made so many that it would be too long to list them.
You've corrected so much.
Yeah, next to...
Fair. Streamers, it's all happening.
It's all happening. I hope the roof isn't falling down while it's happening.
Just next to Vexen.
Yeah.
I would like to ask, what's the difference between mistakes and failures? Because sometimes I feel like when I try doing something and it doesn't work out, I feel I failed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, it's really important to understand, like, sometimes you are going to be motivated to do a loving thing, and you take what you believe is a loving action, and you do it to your best ability, and it fails. That's going to happen, because the world around you is governed towards unloving behaviour. So naturally, it's not supportive of your loving behaviour. Does that make sense? So you might, like, I have taught Divine Truth for 20 years. Do you think I feel very successful? Well, it depends how you measure success, doesn't it? Like, if you measure success as millions of people listening and the whole world changing, then I've been woefully inadequate, haven't I? Right? And if I'm not careful, I could see it as a failure on my part, right? And when you feel failure, you have a tendency then to give up, don't you? You notice that? You have a tendency to go, I put all that effort and that time and the energy, and I thought it was really good, and it really was good. Sometimes things you choose to do are really good, and they don't work out.
And failure indicates the end of an opportunity, doesn't it? It's like when you sit the exam and you pass or fail. The exam's over and you've passed or failed. But when you're in a process of living as a human soul, there's always more opportunities. So there's never a pass-fail moment.
And sometimes you've got to learn also resilience as a soul quality. Resilience is a part of your soul, like being resilient enough where you've dealt with enough emotion where what is perceived as failure by others, you no longer feel is failure yourself, as long as it was loving. Right? And so these kind of qualities are often developed by you attempting to do a loving thing and finding out that the world is not really very happy sometimes about you doing a loving thing. And so sometimes it feels like you didn't accomplish what you set out to do, and you can question as to why, like you can work through why, but to treat yourself badly by not attempting to do another loving thing, that's not good for you. So many of you have done this with relationships. You understand? You've had a few relationships. They haven't worked out. You feel hurt by them. You haven't let go of your hurt. And then having a relationship is a good thing, but you haven't gone through the experience properly yet and let it go. And so now you feel very disinclined to have another one. Does that make sense? So that's an example of you, of there being a loving opportunity, but you won't take it because of past experience, right? And because of this sensation that I failed before, I'm probably going to fail again, so what's the point? A defeatist attitude is against your soul. Does that make sense? It's a hopeless state of the soul. It's against your soul doing things. So when you enter a hopeless state in your soul, in your feelings, you are now in a state where you are easily saddened and easily shutting down the soul-based faculties that you have, and that's not going to help your future at all. That makes sense? Yeah. So I'd encourage you to never, sure, you'll do things, you'll even do loving things, and sometimes they will not work out, right? Sometimes they won't. A relationship is interesting because it requires two parties to work on it. And you might want to work on it, but the other half of the relationship might not want to. So when it fails, you're not the only part to play in the failure. And also, by looking at it as a failure, instead of going, well, what did I learn from that? What can I learn from that so the next time I have a relationship, I don't enter the same dynamic and the same problems and the same experience? Then it's been of benefit to me. But if I go all hopeless and go, that's the point. We talk to many people at home, just let me have a cough. We talk to many people at home who are living single lives, and many of them, when we get down to the grassroots of it, it's all to do with emotions of pain that they don't want to feel.
So what we've just said about mistakes and failure is the truth. But if you feel like you failed,
well, it's a feeling, so
you
you've got to have it.
To have your feeling so that you can release that feeling and receive God's truth that it was just a mistake.
But don't be so self-absorbed that you stay in it.
Yeah, that you get, because a lot of times we can get angry and hopeless in that place, which is not the same as just grieving what we thought was an opportunity that would be fulfilled or an effort that would come to fruition. There can be grief in that causes us to think we're a failure, but then we can also slip into, it's useless, it's hopeless, I shouldn't try, and all of that is actually angry feelings. Avoiding
which is
that
a different
first
feeling,
grief.
really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's like a child. A child learns to walk by observing everybody else. They all look to be having fun. They can run and jump and all these things, and I can't. I'm here on the ground crawling, right? So the child's observing everybody, and it doesn't even hardly think of it. It just says, I want to walk. So the child starts getting up to walk, and bang, right? And it cries straight away. It processes its feelings about the pain of the event straight away. If it didn't, it would never get up and walk again. But what it does is it processes the feeling straight away. This all happens naturally. Processes the feeling straight away. And what does it do? Next 5 minutes, it's just finished crying. It's just finished like, that was terrible, that hurt. And it's just felt through all of that. And what does it do? The very next thing. Up again. Wobbling again. You understand? And because it knows that sometimes, and this is an instinctual knowing, right? That sometimes you'll make mistakes and you'll learn from them. But many of us have lost that feeling with life. Mm-hmm. We don't have that feeling with life. To have that feeling with life is a part of the soul's development. Right? The intellect's screaming, going, no, it's going to be painful. No, it's going to be painful. No, don't do that again. It's going to be bad. You failed last time, And then you have spirits around you in that state saying, yeah, you failed last time. Don't do it again. It wasn't, And all of those things influence you into shutting down and getting smaller and no longer being the pinnacle of God's creation, but being a really small subset of it. Yeah. So we encourage you to open up your soul. So, can we say this? So tonight, here's some homework for you tonight. Got notepads? You're going to need them.
It's going to be pass or fail in the morning.
You'll be booted out if it doesn't. Yeah, like that.
No, never.
Yeah. Okay. What are the methods I am using to shut down my own soul? Now that's bearing in mind the soul is these things. Right? What are the methods I am using to shut down my own soul? Remember, the goal of the prayer is that we are the pinnacle of God's creation. We can open our soul. We can open these faculties. This is and I can't express strong enough. These things are certainties that exist as part of the faculties of your soul. They're real. You have been taught that many of them are imaginary, but they are real. These are real faculties that exist in your soul's capability. What have I done? Or what has been done to me, if you want to know, if you want to. But fundamentally, what I've found is it doesn't matter what somebody did to you. What matters is what you're now doing. You can have a hard childhood, you can have bad parents, you can have shut down parents, you can have stoic parents, you can have ridiculing parents and parents who are violent and all sorts of problems like that. You can have all of that. But you now have some level of control over your own life. You can change that. What causes you to not want to change that? What causes you to shut down this part of your soul? This soul of yours that you've been designed to have as the pinnacle of God's creation. What choices are you making to shut it down? Right? Because if you're making decisions to shut down your own soul, how can you then pray that God opens you up? I pray that you, God, will open up my soul. How is God going to open up your soul if you're actively working against your soul opening up? Can you see? He's a respecter of your will. He created you with this will. He's not going to compromise your will. So if you're using your will to shut down, how can you then pray that you open up? Can you see that would be disingenuous, wouldn't it? It would be out of harmony with truth. If I'm in a state where I'm going, I want God to open me up, but in actual fact I don't want to open up, then how can I expect God to want to open me up?
And I'm actually going to not recognise the help to open me up. I'm going to see all of God's workings to open me up as problems in my life.
Yeah. Yep. And in fact, many of you have that sort of view of God's laws, like the law of cause and effect, the law of attraction, spirit influence and all those things. You sort of look at them all very negatively going, oh, this is all problematic and it's all hard. And I'm going, no, it's all there to help you open up, all there to help you have an experience that you're open up to. Yeah. So, what are you doing? What are you doing to close yourself down? Let yourself ponder tonight, a bit about what do I actually feel emotionally? Am I happy with life? Am I content? Am I peaceful? Am I desirous? Do I have passion? What direction am I taking? Do I long for a certain direction? What goals do I have? What future aspirations do I have? Let yourself think about all of that, because that's what drives your soul to action, into desire. Right? And then the second question I'd like you to ask is this. Why hasn't my desire been for God? Why hasn't my desire been for God? What causes me to sort of view it as it's not going to happen? What causes it to me to view it as, it's all too
way off,
fairy-ish, fairyland, like magical crap. In Australia we'd call it magical bullshit. What causes me to believe that? To feel like it's not worth doing? What inside of me feels like it's not even worth the attempt? Because obviously if we haven't been praying or longing for God's love up until now very much, then obviously we don't feel it's worth the attempt. So we've got to start to examine why we don't. If we're going to enter a more loving state, and we need a love from the outside source in order to do that, then it makes sense that I go, well, what's stopping me from doing that? Because whatever it is important for me to deal with. I need to address it, not just, it's okay. I know Jesus raves on about God and God's love and everything, but
what's most important is my feelings.
Yeah. What's most important is I'm in pain, and why can't he help me with that? I am not providing you a self-improvement program. Right? Many people think that's what Divine Truth is, like a self-help program. This is why many of you have asked me for years and years what your emotions are. Like as if I'm some kind of self-help guru who wants to help you with your emotions. I don't. I hardly want to know what they are. The main reason why is because you need to know what they are, right? And it doesn't help you, me knowing. It helps you knowing, right? And so this is why these kind of questions are important to ask yourself, because you're the person who has direct control over whether you receive God's love or not, and you're the person who's the only person who can exercise a desire so that you can become more loving. I can't exercise a desire for you. I can talk about it, maybe inspire you a bit, but I can't do it. It's yours, right? You can't do it for me either. It's mine, right? For all of us to become more loving, it has to be an individual decision and choice. It can't be a shared decision. I know some of you want it to be a shared one. You know, you're coming from religions where you all get together and pray. You know, there's quite a lot of people who we meet and say, "Can we get together and pray?" And I go, "No." And they say, "But you're Jesus. Why wouldn't you want to pray with me?" And I go, "Because your prayer is yours. Your prayer is yours. The prayer, I can pray for you, which I do very frequently, but it's not going to benefit you until the prayer is yours." You follow? So. And
a lot of you want to interact with us rather than God because you realise when you have these suspicions. If I really start praying, God might start showing me things that I don't actually want to act on. So could we just talk about some things for a bit longer?
Yeah. And we're doing that out of fear a lot of times, right? We're doing it because we're afraid to face truths.
Yeah, and sometimes you're right, but sometimes you're wrong too. You know, you're just trying to play that risk game with your mind.
Yeah. Many of you are in this risk assessment. If I do that little bit, then God will tell me that thing's wrong, but I don't want to hear that thing's wrong. So I'll just try to maneuver around that bit and do this little bit here. And of course, God can't respond to insincere desires, so nothing happens. And then you go, "I've been listening to Divine Truth for 20 years and still nothing's happening." And you go, "Well, stop manoeuvring around the truth so much. You know, face it. You know, these are things we need to come to terms with, and the prayer helps you come to terms with things. Now, third homework, if you're up to it, if you got that far in the time you got left of the day. What else in the prayer tells you what might be problems? Because this is what I want to lead into tomorrow. What else in the prayer?
So if we look at the prayer, what does it show me?
In the prayer itself.
What it's saying, what do I feel it might highlight some issues in myself. So
that might be preventing
me from receiving
God's love. Makes sense? Tim, you want to ask?
Yep.
We just have a mic.
The third to last paragraph, the keep me in the shadow of your love every hour and moment of my life.
Yep.
Help me overcome the temptations of the flesh and the influence of the...
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing we're thinking of, right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing we're thinking of, because there's a lot in that paragraph.
But actually, you know, in every paragraph there are kind of key principles that...
will help you see what your problems may be. Yeah. Like the one we've been looking at, I am the pinnacle or the greatest of your creation. Can you see many of you don't feel that, right? Many of you don't feel that you're a creation. You feel like you're God, some of you, right? And many of you don't, if you do feel like you're a creation, you feel like, well, I'm pretty shit one.
I was in the second
like
batch.
God did a bad
batch.
I'm just using the words you're using to describe yourselves, many of you.
It's not true.
Yeah. Many of you feel that way, right? That you weren't designed very well. What's the problem? Why weren't you designed so well? And you sort of almost think, well, God's partially to blame for that. But also partially you worry that maybe you're just a flaw. Like some of you even have the idea, I'm not created the same as anyone else. You know, I don't have the same abilities as have been given, you know. And none of these things are actually true. You have unique personalities, but you all have design with the same abilities. Right? And God did that on purpose, because if he didn't do it, we would have all been unequal. And some of us would have been greater than one other of us if that happened. And that wasn't ever God's intention. God's intention is that you all feel like we're equal. We're all equals, right? To do that, we're going to have to all feel we're the greatest of God's creation, but we're equal, aren't we? So have a look at the prayer and examine what beliefs is it confronting that you don't have. when you analyse your feelings, not your thoughts, but your feelings, you know. Do you feel that way? I can't even remember what I said now.
It's to read the prayer, read the prayer in its entirety, and see if it highlights to you look at different parts, all the different parts of it, and what it highlights to you in terms of your resistances or certain beliefs.
Things that are preventing you from praying.
That are preventing your sincere longing with God.
Yeah. Yeah. Because part of this is getting to know yourself a bit, getting to know your feelings. You know, not just your ideas or your thoughts or what you believe about yourself, but your actual feelings, like particularly with God. What are they?
And not just your feelings, sometimes it's your stubbornness with God. Yeah. You know, you want to fight for certain beliefs. Yeah.
You want to fight for evil loves. You know, there's certain things you love that you know are not good, but you love them anyway. And what effect does that have? You know, and what are they called in here in the message? They're named things.
Yep.
What are they? And so you can identify and relate to the content. So the fundamental thing we're trying to do is help you relate to the content of the prayer, right? So you can see, these are the things that I'm going to need to feel about with God if I'm going to have a prayer. Yeah. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Good. Well, I'm tired now. I want to go home.
It's been lovely to see all of you guys. Thanks for your participation. Yeah.
Mary and I have a bit of a shutdown process to do, so we would ask that you don't interfere with us until we've done that process at least. Yeah. And also gone to the toilet.
Yeah.
Which is something we need to do.
Yeah.
We will catch you tomorrow at 11 a.m., yes? And tomorrow's discussion will be a continuation, as we've said tonight, of what we discussed today. But the following day, we're going to change tack a bit. So we'll just warn about that in advance. All right?
Yep.
Good day, guys.
Have a good night,
Have a good
everyone.
night. Yep. Enjoy each other's company.